Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and this is Chapter 3 of Adventures at Hollywood Hits. So, Sarah and Arnold are both working at the Golden Sun Diner. It's one of their shifts, and Arnold takes essentially a bin full of dirty dishes and some glasses back into the kitchen area, and he's gonna hand those over specifically to the dishwasher, who his name is Simon Slayer Gritton, and so he gives those dishes over to Slayer, as he calls him, who of course is a big metal fan, and so Simon actually he acknowledges that and takes those over into the dishwashing area, and at that point Sarah comes back into the kitchen area and she kind of pulls Arnold aside and she says, "Hey, I wanted to talk about what happened the other night. Our journey into confrontation constellations." And she kind of lowers her voice so that Simon Slayer Gritton, the dishwasher, can't hear him. And so at that point, he says, "Yeah, let's talk about it. It was pretty interesting." She says, "Well, one thing I wanted to figure out was time. So, it seemed like we were there for 3 days." In that we were there 3 days in the confrontation constellations world, by my count. Is that what you remember? And so he kind of puts it together and goes, "I thought it was kind of like 2.5." And she says, "Well, I'm pretty sure it was about 72 hours, almost exactly." And he says, "Well, I really wasn't watching my watch. I really wasn't watching my watch. I was just thinking about that entire world." And he's like, "I'm really excited to get back there. It's really going to be great to go right back in and have more adventures in constellation confrontations." And Sarah says, "Well, there's a lot of other movies there." And so he kind of smiles, and she says, but when we came back out, I looked on my watch and only 3 minutes had passed. So we spent 3 days in the world of constellation confrontations, and only 3 minutes passed in this world. So I think it's important that we understand that." And Arnold goes, "That's amazing, And he goes, "Why do you think it's 3 days?" And so Sarah says, "Well, it's pretty obvious, don't you think?" And he goes, "It's not obvious to me." And she's like, "Well, Sherlock it." And she goes, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "You don't watch Sherlock?" And he goes, "I don't have time to watch a lot of television." And so Sarah says, "Well, I think the reason we were there for 3 days is that's the time of the rental. So back, when Hollywood Hits was open, before 2005, when you would rent a video, that's how long you would be able to have the video out for, 3 days, correct?" And he's like, "You're absolutely right. It was a 3-day rental. That is exactly right. So we paid $3.31. We got 3 days in constellation confrontations. I'd say that's a pretty good deal." And so he's really excited. And Sarah, she smiles. She says, "It's pretty amazing. One thing I'm curious of is, for our aging, did we age 3 days, or did we age 3 minutes, or did we age 3 days and 3 minutes?" And Arnold says, "Well, what does it matter? It's not really going to make any difference." And she says, "Well, time counts. Time matters. It matters to me." And she says, "So when are we going again?" And he says, "Well, I kind of agree with you. We should go again relatively soon. I think it is safer if we go together." He says, let me think about it today, and I'll see you at tomorrow's shift, and we'll do it from there, okay?" So that night, Sarah returns to her dormitory. And it's very late, and she gets back to her dorm. She rides her bike back to Old Mare College, and so she rides her bike back, and she takes her 2015 Orbea Orca M2, and that's the bike that Sarah uses for her. That's her road bicycle, right? All right, and which Arnold had remarked on in the last chapter. So at that point, she goes back to the dorm, and she comes into her dorm room, and she's just tired. She's just ridden, all the way from the Golden Sun Diner. It's quite a few miles, all the way out to Elmira College, and she's really kind of busted. It's just a day. She worked an entire shift. She rode her bike back, And so she comes into the room, and Denise is there. Right now, Denise is just sleeping in her dorm bunk, the way she normally would. And so Sarah sits down on her dorm bunk, and she's facing across, and she realizes that Denise is awake, which shouldn't be. And she's got her, she has her blankets pulled up, and Sarah goes, "What's the matter, Denise? And are you having trouble sleeping?" And Denise just kind of shakes her head, and just kind of pulls the covers up, and she goes, "What's going on? Talk to me." And so she's alarmed, and she clearly doesn't want to talk about it. And so Sarah's like, I hope you're okay. And and then Sarah just kind of settles back, and her eyes go wide, and she realizes that that Denise had went out to this party with Mark. She had told Mark, I don't think you should be going out with this guy, and that she didn't like him, and that she really thought Mark was a bad guy. And so she's about to say, "This is Mark," and she catches herself because she realizes she wants to comfort Denise, and so she doesn't say anything, and she walks over. She actually gets down onto her knees, and she puts her, her face close to Denise's face, and she goes, "When was the last time you've eaten?" And Denise just kind of shakes her head, and she goes, "I'm gonna go get you some water, and I'm gonna get you something from the vending machine. And would you be kind enough to just eat a little bit of something?" And Denise doesn't say anything, so she goes out, she gets her water, she comes back, she got her some M&Ms, and she says, "Here you go," and because she knows that she loves chocolate. And so Denise just kind of sits up, and she's got a big frown on her face, and Denise doesn't say anything, and Sarah, wise to how her roommate functions, just sits with her, and she tells her about what her bike ride back was. She tells her about how a BMW got a little close to her, and how she saw a fox run in front of her bicycle when she was riding back. And she just kind of talks to Denise and tries to comfort her. And then she walks away. So she spends a couple hours with her, and then finally Denise falls asleep. And Sarah does not fall asleep. She actually goes out to the common room, and she sees Mark. And as soon as she sees Mark sitting in the common room, she is just extremely angry and extremely frustrated. And she just kind of growls to herself, very angry. And then she leaves and goes back into her own room. And then she finally gets some sleep, even though she's angry, because she is still very tired. All right. So the next day, the shift comes along, and so she rides back to the Golden Sun Diner, and so she goes in, and she's worked for a couple hours, and Rita comes over, and she puts the money into the cash register, and starts and she processes away like a $10-15 tip, and Rita goes, "Hey, that's great, that's a great tip," and she goes, "Yeah, it's been a really good night. I'm really excited." And so at that point, Rita says, "Hey, are you and Arnold dating?" And so at first, Sarah just full stop. She says, "It's kind of a personal question, but the answer is no. No, we are definitely not." And so Rita Harnison, who is the owner of Golden Sun Diner, she says, "Oh, thank goodness! I'm very excited to hear that. I was kind of worried, so I'm very glad to hear that that's not the case, because I don't think that would be a really great idea." And Sarah just kind of frowned. She goes, "Why don't you think that'd be a very good idea?" She goes, "Well, there's multiple reasons." She says, "Well, one, listen, Arnold is a great worker. I really value what he does here. He's a very hard worker. He's always on time. He's good with the customers. He's quick. He works hard. I'm not saying, and also he's honest. We've never had any money problems with him, and you know what that could be like. We've had some people come and go here, but if you notice, he doesn't really talk to other employees. Have you ever noticed that?" And she goes, "Well, there's reasons for that." And she says, "Well, he doesn't talk to other employees. He doesn't laugh at other people's jokes. He doesn't make any jokes. He's not very social, right?" And she says, "Well, and then, she's kind of quiet for a moment, and then Rita says, "But listen, have you ever noticed Pedro So Pedro, he is, he really likes spending time with you, and and Pedro is the other bus boy here at. Pedro is another bus boy who works at Golden Sun Diner, and so she says, Pedro, he spends time with you. He's always going out with you on your smoke breaks to talk to you. You noticed that, right? And she goes, well, yeah, he's a real nice kid. I always talk with him, but she says, well, he's not a kid. He's 22, 23 years old now, and he's got a lot going on. So Sarah just kind of laughs. She goes, what on earth does he have going on? And she says, well, have you seen his car? And she goes, of course I've seen his car. It's like 20 years old. It's covered in primer, right? And she goes, that's a 1969 Camaro, Rita says. And the engine is perfect, and it's been rebuilt by Pedro. And he's done all that on the money he's earned here and on the money he's earned fixing cars for people in his community. And he doesn't even charge that much. And so a lot of them have just traded other parts that he needed, or helped him to get parts when he needed them, or helped him find parts in different yards around Minnesota. And she goes, wow, I did not know he had done most of the work on that car himself. And she goes, yeah. So Pedro's, great kid, really bright. He's an up-and-comer, man. You should pay attention to him. And, so Sarah says, oh, well, listen, I think you're underselling Arnold. You don't know why he's withdrawn. And so Rita says, do you know why he's withdrawn? And Sarah says, well, no, I really don't, right? And so Rita says, listen, Pedro likes you. He's a nice kid, and he is, he's working hard, and I think you should pay a little more attention to him. And so at that point, excuse me, and so she says, I think you should consider that, right? And Sarah says, well, I just don't understand your opinion toward Arnold. She says, don't spend your time with somebody who's not social and really is not interested in you. That's pretty clear. I mean, it seems like he's sending a lot of those signals. Am I right? So Sarah's like, oh, well, I better get that, that order out. So she grabs an order and she gets out of the way because she doesn't want to talk about this anymore, right? So she goes over and she grabs her next order, and she sees she's taking some coffee over to Michael Straub's, who is the local librarian. So she grabs his coffee, and she says, hey, and she grabs his coffee, but she also goes over and she grabs a slice of lemon meringue pie. And she brings over the slice of lemon meringue pie, and she says, Michael, how are you? So Michael, the librarian, he says, hey, how are you, Sarah? It's good to see you again. She says, thanks for bringing my coffee. He goes, I didn't order this. And so she puts the pie down, and she says, I know you didn't order this, but this is on me tonight. So, and I hate to ask this, but I did want to ask you, how's your wife doing? And so Michael says, well, she has cancer, and she's really doing bad. We've had a hard time of it. That's why I've been in a little less lately, and I'm just trying to do what I can to just really encourage her and be there for her. But it's hard, and I think it's even affected my work at the library. I found some books misshelved, and it's just been hard. And so Sarah says, hey, I want you to eat this lemon meringue pie, which I know you enjoy, and I just want you to think, just try to take a break in your mind and try not to dwell on your problems. And I really hope everything gets better, and I'm really pulling for your wife, and I hope everything goes well for her. So Michael says, hey, thank you. I really appreciate that. So, and so he says, thank you. So, so she says, okay, thanks for taking the pie. And so she goes away. So that the rest of the night goes by, and Sarah goes and she goes, oh, so are we going to adventure? Or are we going to Hollywood Hits tonight? And so Arnold says, listen, I want to go. I think we can go tomorrow night, but I have something I have to take care of tonight. And I want, I can't, I don't have time to go over to Hollywood Hits tonight. She goes, what are you doing? He's, sorry, I can't discuss it. But tomorrow night, we'll go to Hollywood Hits. And I'm excited that you're excited. I want to go. Just be clear, I definitely want to go. All right. And so she says, okay, I understand. And she says, but hey, do you got 5 minutes? And he says, yeah, I got 5 minutes. right? So she goes, come on out, So they put away their stuff, they clock out, they go around back and of the Golden Sun Diner, and kryptonite locked to some pipes behind the Golden Sun Diner is Sarah's Orbea Orca M2 bicycle, right? But right next to it is a Ghost Kato 4 mountain bicycle, right? And she goes, I got you something, right? And so she takes a key off of her keychain and she unlocks a kryptonite lock on the Ghost Kato 4 mountain bike. And he goes, mountain bike? And she goes, yeah. And she goes, this is for you. And he goes, well, why? I don't mind walking. And she says, well, you're losing time. It's a lot of time to go back home, and it's a lot of time to get here. You can do it a lot faster on this bicycle. And he goes, well, I've never been much of a bicycler. I can certainly ride one. It's been probably 4 or 5 years since I've ridden a bicycle very much. And she goes, but the real thing is, I can't afford this, right? And he goes, it's probably cost you $200-300. So she kind of shakes her head, and he's like, this was $200-300, right? And she goes, no, it was a little more than $200 or $300. And he goes, well, how much did this bike cost? And she goes, well, this is a Ghost Kato 4. This is a $1,000 bike. And he goes, what? I don't have any near this. She goes, this is a gift. This is a gift. And he goes, I can't accept a $1,000 gift from you. That's crazy. And she says, it didn't cost me anything. And he's like, what? How did this not cost you anything? Right? And she goes, well, there's a whole bunch of things here. One, this didn't cost me anything. And two, this is not nearly as expensive as my bike. Right? And he goes, well, wait, we're going to talk about your bike later. But, he says, but how did you get a $1,000 bike for nothing? And she goes, well, and she goes, I happen to play, James Corahan? And he goes, yeah, of course, they're a customer. He's in charge of Corahan Insurance Trust, right? Comes in, usually gets a cheeseburger, drinks decaf. And he goes, yeah, that's right. She goes, well, I play in a poker game with him about every 4 to 6 weeks. And I usually come away with a lot. Actually, I often come away with about $2,000, $3,000, maybe sometimes $4,000. And his eyes go wide and he goes, why are you working here?